Jeanne Beker, it is so wonderful to have you here on Fashion Talks. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Always love talking with you, Donna.
Oh my gosh, it's such a pleasure. So, I always start with the same question, and I'm quite delighted because I feel like, given our conversation is going to be around your new book, the memoir, Heart on My Sleeve, I love to ask people because I believe that all of us who love fashion, who work in fashion, have a moment when we realize that clothing, that fashion holds a power that is more than just protecting our bodies from the sun, the wind, the rain, the snow. And I'm wondering if there's a moment where you remember harnessing or acknowledging that power?
I mean, I think for my earliest memories as a little girl, the party dresses that I would wear. I mean, that was always a big deal. That was the thing that you just look forward to the most. I mean, I know these days lots of little girls have actual costumes that they wear, like princess costumes and what. I mean, back in the day for me, it was just those party dresses with the crinolines and the taffeta dresses, the organza dresses, the frills, the lace, the little applique flowers, so I can't remember specifically. There's a whole, batch of them that I have in my mind's eye right now, but specifically, when that was, I wore my first party dress. But I always realized that, yes, that meant a special time, and it was incredibly empowering because you just felt the most beautiful in that dress, the most beautiful you'd ever seen yourself. So definitely going back to my childhood birthday parties.
I love that. And of course, you talk about your 16th, your sweet 16 in the
Mm.
book, which is such a beautiful story. And I so loved reading your book, Jeannie. And like I told you, I actually listened to it while I also read it. So it was so lovely to hear your voice sharing these stories. And I couldn't help but wonder, what was your process doing this? Did you have diaries that you could refer to, or did you just sort of like meditate in your
Mm.
closet and look at the things you wanted to focus on? How did you begin the process of putting the book together?
Well, I've always held on to certain pieces, and some of them I've held on to for a long, long, long time. Some of them, sadly, my mom threw out over the years. My mom, blame it on my mom. Um,
I blame it on my mom too. Don't
so
we all lose things we
some
wish we'd
some of
hung
these
on
things
to?
I don't have, but many of them, like I do still have. And I knew that this would be a wonderful template for the book as well because it would help me edit the stories that I was going to tell. If I didn't have a special accessory or a piece of clothing to go along with the story, I just wouldn't tell that story. I'll save it for another book because there were a lot of great stories that I wanted to tell, but you could only tell so many. So I thought doing it through the lens of wardrobe would be really great, and I knew what those pieces were. Like I know about those pieces that I've held on to. I thought about those pieces that really meant something to me, and the stories associated with them.
They felt very deep, like these are things that you didn't just pull out kind of superfluously, but you've been really steeped in them given the relationships with either friends or designers or colleagues. There are moments that really had impact in your life.
Well, one of the directives from the publishing house, Simon and Schuster, when they approached me to do a book, was that and I had written a couple of memoirs already. You live long enough, you write a lot of memoirs. But this time round, they were saying, we believe that you've got a lot of life lessons under your belt. We believe there's a lot of wisdom there that you could share. So I really did try to impart some kind of, life lesson with each and every story. Some, are more blatant than others, I guess. But that was something that was important to me too. Not just tell the story for the sake of telling the story, although it, conjured up some wonderful imagery. But that, what did I glean out of that experience? And that's something that I really wanted to share.
And is that something that you talk about with, your girls and your friends and whatnot as well, as kind of like how clothing has been a lens for lessons and other experiences that you've had, or is that something that stays a little more close to your heart and isn't
Well, the
so much
clothes aren't necessarily, a lens for that, but the clothes are touchstones. They're springboards for these stories. I mean, it's the stories themselves, obviously, that teach you
Mhm.
something. But I think it's just all part of my DNA now. I mean, it's just the way I see the world. I mean, it's not all, like, and I hate to, I don't want to bite the hand that feeds me or be, like, I mean, at the end of the day, fashion smashing. Like the clothes aren't, and the garments and the pieces of my wardrobe aren't, what drive me and what I find the most passion in. But again, these are the wordless witnesses to our lives. I mean,
Yeah.
these are things that accompany us on all our adventures. They're actually there. They're experiencing the situation along with us. They're having the experience along with us, although, and often they can really empower us in wonderful ways. I mean, that's what we all love about fashion. And sometimes they make us feel not so great about ourselves, like, oh, why did I wear that? I was sending the wrong message. It didn't really make me feel like I should have been feeling. So, yeah, I mean, uh, costume, to me, that's what it's all about because I started my career, as an actress, teenage actress, and really always loved the theatrics of the fashion world and still do, and that's probably what I appreciate the most about it and the characters and and it's so much about what people are wearing because that's just telegraphing such huge messages about who we are, not only to others but to ourselves. We learn a lot when we sit back and think of what wardrobe choices that we made at certain points in our lives.
Well, and it's that sense of connection, and I didn't wanna be hyperbolic and try and put, like, more on clothing than, their kind of anchor and emblematicness of who we are in moments and what we're experiencing, but I was struck by, they do connect us to each other, they can connect us to, deeper parts of ourselves sometimes when we feel like we need that little bit of oomph or extra something, then often an article of clothing can provide that, and often it's a beautiful way to feel seen by the other people in our lives, and I was thinking about that with so many of your stories about Taller and Margaret and Gilles and people where you feel seen because maybe they push us to
Mhm,
wear something we may not have otherwise.
mhm. Yeah, I
And
mean,
I
these are
couldn't
all
help.
very personal choices at the end of the day, and this is that we have such an intimate relationship with our wardrobes for sure. But I just, thought this could be a great way to, re-examine some of the wardrobe choices that we've made over the years, and why we had a particular experience, maybe because of that particular garment, or what it
What
what it told us about ourselves, at the time, and what it might be telling us about ourselves even now in retrospect.
did you learn new things about yourself as you were writing the book where you reflected and kind of went, huh, I didn't kind of realize that's what was happening at the time, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know. Not so much. This is something that I've just always been so aware of. And I live in a lot of those moments. It's not like, oh yeah, that was a story that I totally forgot about, and I'm going to tell it now. I mean, these are stories that live with me. They're part of the way I see the world, like each and every one of them. Especially some of the close encounters that I've had that have, kind of rocked me or changed me. I mean, I think, the story that I tell about Iggy Pop and how that felt like such an embarrassing, kind of disastrous experience at the time. And then
Mhm.
the fact that it was played on YouTube and then my producer put it on our show, The New Music, and I was like cringing because like, oh my God, people were like, saying, ah, yeah, Jeannie Beker, who does she think she is? Great to see Iggy Pop put her down. But the fact that I shut down that interview, and was just and walked out of the room. Now in
Yeah.
retrospect, I think, yeah, wow. Like I look at that video and I think, geez, I was only how old I might have been, like my early 30s, and I had the balls to do that. I'm really proud of myself, and I thought I handled that quite well. At the
I'd say
time it
so.
felt cringeworthy, but in retrospect, it's yeah, okay, like I'm the fact that I wore that little bikini with the black pom poms on it, the bikini top,
Mm,
dancing on stage at the Toronto Pop Festival, that impromptu dance that I
yeah.
did at the invitation of Ronnie Hawkins, that what does that tell? I wanted attention, but I kind of knew that about myself. It's not like, oh, I must have really wanted attention. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that was something that I always knew for some reason. I felt like I wanted to be seen. And hopefully, what that's resulted in is the fact that I've been able to touch people um, over the years, and that's been something that has obviously been my greatest joy, knowing that I can connect with people, or people relate to me, or they connected with me, and they watched me through my own life journey, and it's the most meaningful thing of all. But
Well, the new music and fashion television were such lifelines for so many of us
mm,
into, you know, culture and worlds and imagination and creativity
yeah,
that, it
possibility
was our
really.
only. Oh,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like even so many of the people, I talk to here when we talk about like key influences, like your name comes up a lot, Jeanne Beker, like that fashion television was just a gateway that had never been available to us before.
Yeah, it was really the first window onto that world, a very, rarefied kind of a place that people, couldn't get into, that was inaccessible unless you had a backstage pass or the right invitation or knew the right people. And we managed to, get in there. Sometimes I had to elbow my way in and push my way in. And it was wonderful to take viewers by the hand every week, for 27 years, and expose all that, and blow away, some of the smoke and mirrors, trying to demystify the scene, because I was very much, in that world, but I was not of that world. I was like everybody else, I was just this girl that, grew up in Downsview, Ontario, with, child of immigrant parents, that somehow managed to dream this big dream, and I went for it, and so many of my fantasies were realized because I worked my butt off, and a lot of it had to do with timing and the time in the media, certainly, because the media has changed so much. It's become something else now. It's, social media has totally kind of, not. I mean, I love social media too, but it's just kind of um,
It's different.
watered down a lot of the power of the media, the way we used to know it and consume it. So, yeah, it's been an incredible journey, and so many different factors were at play. Like, I did, yes, timing, and just the connections that I made with people, and my my energy was kind of right for the time as well, maybe.
There were 2 chapters that kind of resonated with me as age-old kind of questions or thoughts around clothing and style, and one was your, chapter with Keith Richards, where he is just, cool personified, and it got me thinking about what comes first, the confidence to wear a certain thing, or when we put it on, does it imbue us with that confidence that
Mm.
allows us to project that?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, a little bit of both. It just depends of how inspired we are to don a certain something, or how much we really, want to change or be transformed. And sometimes it does take a little bit of nerve to step out of our comfort zone and try something that we may not have tried before, try something bold that is, might get a mixed reaction. Um, but on the other hand, sometimes it just feels like the most natural thing to do, and you're just ready for it. It's just a moment in time that you just embrace and go for it, and there's sometimes the consequences are a little questionable. But you're, as long as we're always being true to ourselves. I think that's the most we can really ask of ourselves. Like just to be authentic, and sometimes, yeah, we get locked into these images of ourselves, and we are reluctant to change, and we choose uniforms for ourselves sometimes, or we wear our hair a certain way because that's just the way we've always seen ourselves, and we're afraid to but Yeah, I mean, it you just never know when you get the inspiration for a change, and very often it's great. I mean, I don't see a lot of people going back to the way they were. Usually, once they step out and they commit, it's really got some wonderful transformative powers. The things that fashion does for us.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
I think it's such an accessible way for us all to experience with having a little bit of guts. Even if it's as simple as I always wear black and white and today I'm going to wear yellow or green.
exactly. Yeah.
It's such a simple way to push ourselves
Mhm.
when the ramifications of that can be really hopefully exciting
Yeah,
sometimes.
for sure, for sure.
I was also thinking about your interaction with Madonna and showing up in the same pants, which I was just like, "Oh, I think that would be amazing." But
Yeah,
it
I
brought to
thought it
light for
was
me
amazing. She didn't think it was so
right?
amazing, but she just loved
Hello, connection.
yeah.
But there is this fear that I think we all have sometimes of I'm going somewhere and what if someone wears the same thing as me? Like showing up
Yeah.
wearing the same
I
thing as
honestly
someone
I
can
honestly tell you that has never, ever bothered me. I would look forward to seeing someone in the same thing as me. I remember, years ago, a bunch of, editors had the same Lita Bidet, suit, kind of like this tweed, black and white suit, but we decided to all go to this fancy restaurant in Yorkville and have lunch together, and we all agreed to wear the same suit. I mean, the editors of, various magazines, and I can't remember exactly who was at the table, but, I was, this was one of my favorite suits, and Lita Bidet was certainly one of our favorite designers, an iconic
yeah.
Canadian designer, and we all showed up in the same suit, but the fact that we wore it all different ways. I mean, I think it was quite a sight to behold, this like 5 or 6 women sitting at a table, like, all wearing the same thing, but you would accessorize it differently, or just even the way that we carry things. This is what I always say, it's not the garments that give us style, it's the way we move through the world in them. It's definitely the way we wear them. I mean, if it was just the garment, like, ugh. And some people do think that, sadly, and for some people that is all it is. I mean, I hate to say it, I've met some of the so-called best dressed people on the planet in my day, wearing, designer duds from head to toe. And after a few minutes of conversation, they don't really seem to have very much style at all. That's really not what does it. But they certainly help. I mean, garments are great props. When used in the right way. But no, I've never been afraid of someone wearing the same thing at all. I think it's quite a joyful thing. A couple of times when it has happened, like, not deliberately, but just, it was like, oh wow, you're wearing the same shoes, you're wearing the same dress, you're wearing the same outfit. Isn't that cool? Like, to see it on someone else.
I agree. I tell my girlfriends all the time, like, please be my fashion twin. I don't mind. Like, you like the shoes I'm wearing? I'll tell you exactly where to buy them.
Mhm.
Like,
I know, yeah,
please.
because that's not what true originality isn't about. That it's about individual, expression far beyond the garments that we put on our backs.
Absolutely. Well, and that makes me think about being a parent because I share your philosophy that you said in the book about like not arguing or policing what my kids wear. Mine are a little younger than yours. They're late teens and early
Mhm.
20s. But what do we give our kids, do you think, when we allow them complete freedom in choosing their clothes?
Well, I mean, it's indicative of a lot, not just in freedom of choosing their clothes, but freedom in choosing everything from, their friends to their career paths. And sometimes we not might not be happy with their choices, but I don't know. I've had a kind of a, I don't know, if for better or worse. I'm not saying, my kids turned out perfectly and I'm so happy with all the choices they made or anything like that. But I have had that kind of attitude where, I really wanted my kids to always have a strong sense of themselves and
Yes.
not be, you know, l- um, I don't know, not be living out my fantasies or my desires or the way I would have done it. I mean, I realize they're very different people than me. And my parents were, they may have tried to give me advice, which, I sometimes listen to and sometimes totally shut out. But despite their fears and trepidations, and they really did encourage me to follow my dreams, and that's what I want to encourage my kids to do, and and be originals, and not, I don't want them to follow in my footsteps. People say, "Are your kids following your?" God forbid, like no. Why should they? I mean, I'm suspect of that. I don't know. I think kids have to, just find their own way and do their own thing, and it's a joy to see when they, succeed. And sometimes they're not always successful at first, and we have to have patience and let them, work it out themselves. Um, but yeah, I definitely have never encouraged, or dissuaded my kids from going out looking a certain way, or that's such when you're, especially for teenagers. I think it's just such an important time in your life to really assert yourself and figure out who you are and what you like and what your own, develop your own taste. And I think that's great. I didn't always love their choices, that's for sure, and they may have known that I didn't love their choices, but that's okay. I just tried to cheer them on every step of the way.
Though even when we don't like their choices particularly, I think those are the moments to really raise the stakes of saying, like, "I trust you, like, this is your choice. I'm not here to, police that for you," because, what our kids wear can be such a low stakes choice that they make where they can foster that sense of intrinsic motivation and confidence and all those things that we hope they develop as
Mhm.
adults. I think those are such beautiful little places for them to do it starting early in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a pretty innocent kind of thing. It's not, when they start running around with, a wild pack or something, like some of the things that can get like a little more dangerous. I mean, that's it becomes more difficult to kind of bite your tongue about stuff like that. But
100%.
you just hope that if you've raised them right and you've given them the right values, ultimately they'll make the right choices. And I firmly believe that my kids have. So very blessed that I guess I must have done something right because they're pretty incredible human beings.
Absolutely. When my daughter borrows something of mine, especially if it's something that I've had tucked away for a while, it gives me like it's such a little pang of joy where I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, she's like wearing something that like I used to wear." And
Yeah.
do you get emotional still when they borrow your things or you see them
Well,
wearing
there's
things that
there's
maybe
a
were yours?
little story in the book about my daughter Joey, who is where still to this day has this wonderful Suttles and Sea Winds quilted
Oh,
vest
the
that I bought when
vest.
I was living in Newfoundland in the mid 70s. And I used to wear it religiously. It was just a great little vest. And she found it among my things and kind of adopted it. And now, like, it's part of her wardrobe. I mean, it's a little tattered, but it's, it's there's just such great sentimental value in so much of the clothing and the, the accessories that we've, hung on to over the years. And that vest, when I saw her wearing that vest, I mean, while I write about it in the book, it was a moment realizing, that, yeah, she was part of me. Also Joey's a musician, and one of her videos for a song called Mirroring, she wears my old wedding gown, and that was a pretty sweet moment too to see her doing a music video, wearing this old gown that I had worn in 1975. Ah, so it's great to have had those hip kind of garments over the years, and of course, who doesn't love 70s fashion? But
Absolutely. I also loved the story about your Ian and the tartan coat and
mhm.
how it was one of the first times you said in the book that you'd been gifted clothing. And It's hard to buy clothing for people, Jeannie. That was such a beautiful moment you guys
Yeah, well, that
shared.
was great. I mean, I was there trying the coat on, so he saw that it fit me and that I liked it and that I looked good in it. So it was a great romantic gesture. Very, very, very early on in our relationship, our first trip to Scotland together, which was actually only a couple months after we met. But
I
that's
loved that.
I've had a kind of a wild love affair with my Ian. I mean, it's almost a decade now that we've been together. We'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary in June, and
Oh, congratulations.
it's at this age and stage of life, you kind of have to fast forward a little bit. You have to, you just can't like, well, I'm gonna see what I get. Like we bought a house together a year after we met. We just knew you know, it was right. I just knew he was the one. I sort of waited a long time for just the right person to come into my life, and when he did, it was just fireworks really did go off, and it was just every classic wonderful thing that you hear about, what it's like, love at first sight, and yeah, so we kind
The
of just
picture
thought,
of the
no
2 of
time to
you
waste
at
here. We just got to get going.
and the picture you share in the book of the 2 of you, where it looks like you've been together for
Well, the
years,
very first night
was
we
one
met.
of the very first photo taken of you
Yeah, the very
guys.
first night we met, we were just all over each other. So it was wonderful. It was just it was a moment. I mean, the angels were definitely with us. I'm sure, my late great mom was orchestrating a lot of that from above because she had passed just 2 weeks earlier. And I was in a pretty sad state when I met Ian. I was at the McMichael Gallery's annual Moonlight Gala fundraiser. An event I really didn't want to attend because I didn't have a date in there. Oh, I'm going to put on a little black dress again and go to this thing solo. But my best friend Penny said, "No, no, let's go. We'll hire a limo to go out there and we'll have a great time. I'll go. I'll be your date." So she talked me into it, and I got there and sort of, she was running around schmoozing and I was like, sort of crying into my champagne flute. And all of a sudden I saw this really cute guy checking me out, from across the room. And the next thing I know, he's like making a beeline towards me. And, he stuck his hand out. He goes, "Hi, my name's Ian McInnes. And I just want to congratulate you on always having kept yourself so relevant." And I thought, man, that's the sexiest thing that a guy could say to a woman
Right?
of a certain age, especially, that we just all want to be relevant, don't we? So that I just knew that, okay, this guy is gonna get me. He's gonna get why I dance as fast as I can, and why it is important for me to feel plugged in and just keep going all the time. So anyway, it was just a wonderful, wonderful. That night he invited me to go to Scotland with him. I was like, yeah, okay.
So romantic, such big swings. I loved how it kind of bookended or it ended your book when it started with beautiful stories about your mom and her friend that was such like an influential kind of
Mrs.
tastemaker.
Yaskulka, the fashion maven that lived around the corner, and a fellow Holocaust survivor, one of my mom's best friends. And she just, wow, she really knew about that. Like my mom was about 5 feet tall at the most. I mean, maybe even a little under 5 feet tall. But Mrs. Yaskulka was like at least 5'8" or something, which in those days was like really tall, and it was like, Mrs. Yaskulka just had such a grace about, she really understood clothing and she just had a great sense of style. And, she and my mom were always having clothes either custom made by these Italian or German dressmakers, or, my mom ended up buying her own sewing machine and concocting a lot of clothes for herself and for my sister and me. And that was a wonderful period all through the 60s where we had these fantastic wardrobes. I mean, fashion became so important in our lives, especially, it was all about mod fashion. And you couldn't buy a lot of these hip and happening styles in Toronto at the time. I mean, you have to go south of the border, you have to go to Buffalo or New Jersey or something to to find some of these cool garments. But my mom, would make them. We'd pour over, Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, and we go to Stitsky's, the fabric store, and choose all these great fabrics. And my mom just magically created these fantastic garments for us, and we were, very fashion forward, my sister and myself.
Well, it made me wanna buy a sewing machine and make my own clothes, but I reflected on just how spoiled we are with access to clothing now.
Mm,
I don't know anyone who custom makes their things or has that kind of personal connection to a tailor or a seamstress that makes their own things, and
mhm,
it made me feel a little like, just a teeny bit sad that we're losing something
mhm,
when we don't have that kind of relationship and connection with
mhm,
makers and the ability to really imbue our own thoughts onto like choosing the fabrics and looking at the patterns and stuff like that's such a really lucky part of the fashion history that you were able to be a part of. And by fashion history I mean like being in the 60s and what, like to be able to have had that kind of tangible connection to what you
yeah.
were wearing. I just thought it was so
To
cool.
feel like a true original, that's something that's just it's harder and harder to do now. I mean, I think a lot of people do it now with through vintage clothing when they want to shop that way, or the way they mix things up, or they're trying to find obscure labels or something. But you're right, it's very different from those days when we had these handmade clothes, and there is definitely a return to um, a love for artisanal pieces, and pieces that have a kind of handmade quality to them, but it's different. I mean, where you can just go on Etsy and find all kinds of fabulous things and just order them up, and they come to you a few
Absolutely.
days later. And you know yeah, it's very different from when you were the one responsible for getting the stuff made yourself. Yeah.
And just the community that came from creating those things with the other people in your life.
Hmm. For sure.
Before I thank you so much for being here, Jeannie, and just as we're getting ready to wrap up, where are you at in fashion in your life right now? Like you've spent so much time, talking about stories of the past. Like, how do you feel in your clothes today?
Comfortable. I mean, comfort has become increasingly important in my life. I mean, I no longer run around the world in 6-inch stilettos. I'd always like hit the ground running. I just can't believe, the way I tortured myself sometimes. But, it was all part of the territory, and I embraced it. But I'm into comfort, but I'm also still take great joy out of putting on just the right garment, and I much more of a concerted effort to make sure the fit is really there, and I appreciate the quality, and I'm very much of the mindset that less is more these days, and you don't need a million things, but you just need to have the right things. But and then in terms of my appreciation for all the wondrous things that I still do have in my wardrobe from days gone by, I'm working on a big exhibit at the Glenbow Museum in Calgary, and when that reopens, because it's currently undergoing a $200 million renovation, and when it reopens next year, one of the great things that they're opening with is a huge retrospective of my career that my dear friend, the Calgary based designer Paul Hardy, and I are putting together. And there's going to be some great fashions in there. I mean, there'll be great videos and great, all kinds of paraphernalia and ephemera and wonderful artifacts from my past. I've held on to all kinds of interesting things, but fashion, of course, is going to be a big part of it, and you'll be able to see a lot of these great, Wayne Clark gowns, or just the stuff that I
Oh,
used to, strut, or some of the dress, the Chanel dress that Karl Lagerfeld gave me when I was, 7.5 months pregnant, or the beautiful a jewel encrusted dress that the House of Dior gifted me with when I was, pickpocketed in Paris
that
and
was
felt like my
crazy.
life was coming to an end. Yeah, well, just a lot of these wonderful garments will be on display, and I'm really excited for that. To really step back and maybe see the forest for the trees in that way.
Well, and a nice way to highlight some of our Canadian designers. You mentioned Wayne Clark and whatnot. I know you're such a champion of local as well as international talent, but it's so nice to be able to highlight our Canadian fashion
Oh,
designers when we can as
absolutely.
well.
There'll be pieces by, Denny Gagnon, and, certainly Greta Constantine, and, as Lita Bidet, of course, Wayne Clark, as I said. Yeah, some great Canadian Z Camilleri, some great Canadian designers.
Looking forward to 2026 in Calgary.
Yeah, me too. I know, but it's got now they may have some issues with the building. It might open a few months later than we thought, and I'm thinking, how old am I going to be when that exhibit opens? Because we've been talking about it for the past couple of years. It just takes so long to put these things together. But we're also then hoping that it should be up for about a year in Calgary, but then it will travel across Canada. So
Amazing.
that's exciting too, or at least a condensed version of it, maybe, because it's going to be quite a huge exhibition.
And if people wanna keep tabs on, watching as that, will open and just, follow your journey along, what is the best place for people to find you,
Oh,
Jeannie?
probably Instagram. Yeah, I'm just a Instagram kid. So it's at the Jeannie Beker, spelled my name right. JeanneBeker, the Jeannie Beker on Instagram. Yeah, I usually post, quite often. Yeah, that's best way.
And we'll link it in the show notes below so people
Okay.
can get the link there too. Jeannie Becker, it's always such a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna. Always great talking fashion with you. Really appreciate it. Thanks.